For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Lindy, and I am a school counselor at Richfield. This is my 21st year at Richfield High School. This is my first year being the sole 11th grade counselor. I am the counselor for the class of 2022. And tonight I have also with me our newest counselor to the department. And Morgan, I'll let you just do a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi, my name is Morgan Kelly. It's my first year at Richfield. It's my 13th year as a counselor, a high school counselor. And I'm here actually to do the Spanish presentation. So I'm here listening and for support if needed, but then I'll be speaking with our Spanish families after this.
Yes, thank you, Morgan. And Morgan, like we said, is new to Richfield this year. We did hire a fourth counselor. We're very fortunate in our department. And she is primarily working with the 9th graders, the class of 2024 for this school year. But we're also very fortunate because she's bilingual. So she's going to run our second session with Spanish speakers. So I also just want to acknowledge everything that's going on in the world today and in the Twin Cities area. In fact, we were saying with the curfew for tonight, we're very glad this is a webinar that we can still hold this. And I just want to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of busy schedules, busy days, a lot going on in the world and in our lives, and just to talk about some exciting next steps for the application process for your kids. Okay, and I'm trying to advance my slide. There we go. So tonight, we're going to talk mostly about what you can be doing, what your kids can be doing for the rest of the school year, over the summer, and then into the fall to be ready as far as what we're looking at the college search. I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of options students can choose after high school, including military, including apprenticeship, trade schools, etc. We understand that there's a number of options. Tonight's presentation is going to mainly focus on 2-year and 4-year college search and college application process. So this is something for those of you who have had students who have gone through the process, for those of you who have gone through the process yourself. Choosing that school can be anxiety provoking, it can be exciting, it can be nerve-wracking, it can be very, very stressful. However, I want you to keep one thing in mind. There isn't any one perfect school. As you can see throughout the United States, with the thousands of schools that are out there, there are dozens and dozens that are going to be perfect for your child. But what we like to do now is to think about it as a little bit of a funnel. So we're starting here, got a lot of options, and in the coming months, we're funneling down to a handful of selections to be able to make the best fit and the best option. So just a couple of success tips, the qualifiers from conversations. And that's something, I've done this job a long time, and I even find myself saying it, oh, that's a good school. Oh, that's a good school. Or, oh, you don't want to go there because it's this reputation. I get that with Consumer Reports and different publishing companies stating, the 100 best colleges and things like that. Again, we want to aim towards fit. What is the best fit for your student? The kind of school that meets those needs. For sure, you want to make sure interests are there, majors and minors, but what else is going on in the campus? Are there things like on-campus events? Is it more known to be a commuter school? Is it more known to be a better student to teacher ratio? Lots and lots and lots of things to make it more than just that's a good school. We want to see what's the best fit for your children. So we're going to take a moment and just do a little bit of a poll, trying to figure out here where all of our attendees are at. And I want you to think about this statement. As a family, We've discussed our child's interests and preferences for their college experience. So the poll would be, no idea, we haven't discussed it at all. Another choice would be, we've discussed it a little bit, we have some ideas. And the third choice, where you're on this spectrum, is the third choice would be, we already have a list made. So just getting an idea about where our listeners tonight, where they're at on that spectrum.
Great. We've got about 50% of our folks voting. Votes are still coming in.
Okay.
I'll give it a couple more seconds before I close the poll. So if you haven't voted yet, go ahead and click one of those options. Let us know where you're at. Okay, great. With almost 80% of our folks voting, 66% of folks they've kind of talked about it. They have a few ideas. 21% have no ideas, haven't talked about it, and 14%, yes, they've got it. They've got a list. They are good to go.
All right, so we have a curve like this a little bit. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that experience. So tonight I am going to kind of hit on that middle ground about you have some idea, but looking for some more direction. And so again, I welcome you, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, to type your questions in the chat, because I know how that comes. Sometimes the question pops up, but then we will take a couple breaks and answer some questions, especially ones that keep coming up. And then at the end, there'll be a time where you can type in some questions, and then I'll be able to get back to you if we run out of time. So kind of a number one general place to start is determining interests and preferences. And I want to preface this conversation with, it's okay if your child doesn't know what they want to do. It's completely okay if they don't even know a ballpark of what they want to do. Because what I like to work with in my years of experience is I find that the students who don't have any idea actually remain a little bit more open to ideas coming to them, rather than maybe somebody who gets super ultra focused on one area or another. So academic life, student life, and then financial, I think, has to become part of the discussion too, and decision eventually. Majors, size of school, how big are the classes? I think sometimes, as an example, people think of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, obviously large university in the Twin Cities area in Minnesota, in the Midwest. And frankly, they do have some big lecture halls. They have some big freshman sections, but many of their classes, as they get more into their majors, are not as large. So that's a little bit of a myth that the University of Minnesota faces sometimes. Smaller schools, they will advertise. Larger schools will too, but smaller schools will even advertise, here's our teacher to student ratio. What kind of resources out there? Are there writing centers? Are there tutor centers? If your student has a 504 or an IEP, what kind of special services office would be included or could be looked at for your student too when they're deciding? Some schools, research opportunities, especially the larger universities, if your child figures out that they want to go into something where they'll need maybe more than a bachelor's degree and maybe would even be looking at postgraduate, master's level, what kind of research opportunities? Would they even be for pay? Would they even be able to be a teaching assistant? And study abroad is a real big one. Of course, with the pandemic, many of the study abroad opportunities were paused or not allowed next year, or this past year. But academics, what are they looking for? I had a student, gosh, I think that was 3 or 4 years ago, wanted to be an elementary education teacher. Elementary education is a pretty big major. It's offered at many, many schools, but the school she had zeroed in on really didn't have an elementary education program. They had a secondary education program and a special education program. So it's looking at those just little details sometimes especially when you really, really start to fall in love with a campus, with a school. Student life. What's going to be going on? If you are somebody, if a student is the kind of person who knows they want to go to football games on Saturdays, if they know they want to be at Big Ten basketball games, if they know they want to be involved in a sport actually for themselves, whether it's intramurals or competitive, those are the types of settings you're going to want to look at, urban or rural. Usually it's larger and smaller. If a religious affiliation is important to you, I will tell you, personally, I went to a private school that was a Catholic affiliated school when I was undergraduate. And it really was, I could be involved as much as I wanted to be. Some religious affiliated schools are not like that. Some would require chapel, things like that. So that would be something that would come into play as well when you're deciding. Demographics, if you're looking at diversity. Athletics, like I mentioned, Division 1 and 2, if your child is an athlete, Division 1 or 2 would provide athletic scholarships. Division 3 does not have athletic scholarships. They would be providing more the academic scholarships. Fine arts, housing. Is it a school that's going to require your child to live on campus, especially freshman year? That's something too that would add on to the cost and the decision. What's going on the weekends? Is it a commuter school? Is it known to be a commuter school? And I say it like this because sometimes people get that idea that nobody's around on the weekends. If your child is really, really looking for the college experience, the resident hall. And the Greek system, that's like fraternities and sororities. I would say over the past, I don't even want to say number of years, but the past number of 5 years or so, the Greek system has become more, what do I want to say? There's been concerns on campuses because of hazing and things like that. So I want you to keep in mind the Greek system isn't just like what we think of as the movie, I'm dating myself a little bit, Animal House. The Greek system also has a lot of service organizations and different opportunities as well. So a little bit of an open mind on that if your child is interested in that. Financial is huge. How are you going to pay for it? That's what we hear constantly. Cost of college going up. So the true cost, which means what does somebody really pay versus the sticker price. The sticker price, kind of like you go in to buy a car. The sticker price oftentimes is what people don't pay, but that is what's the advertised price. Scholarships and aid, are they handing out, distributing merit-based, based on grades, ACT scores, and we'll get there in a little bit, or is it need-based, filling out the FAFSA or filling out the DREAM Act application? What kind of money is the college offering? Are there work-study opportunities on campus? What kind of jobs can a student have, whether it's on campus or maybe they work a part-time job off campus? Room and board, and then transportation. Sometimes students will say, I want to go to Arizona to school. Well, you're thinking about, okay, how do I get back and forth? Is that a plane trip? Is that going to be where we could have a car? So I guess the big picture, determining those interests and preferences. And I'm going to highlight a little bit later, there is a tool on our Naviance program that all of our students have an account. There's a tool on Naviance that actually will, it's called the Super Match, where students can plug in all of their different preferences. And then it'll spout out some answers that match those preferences. And we'll talk about that in a little bit later. And this is just something we kind of giggle about a little bit because, again, in my years of doing this, I see what the students are looking at and what the parents are looking at. If you're thinking of, what are those classes going to look like? And kids hear that all the time. Gosh, when I go to college, the professors don't even take attendance. They won't even know if I show up. Maybe. However, we all know what that means is when you don't show up to class as much, you're not going to learn as much. But the parents might be looking at that bigger school, cheaper tuition perhaps. The location, we talked a little bit about this in the last slide. Freedom, I can be away and my parents won't drop in on me, or I don't have to go home. But then really, how do I get home if I need to get home? And the cost. I think oftentimes students in their brains think, well, I'm going to get scholarships and I won't have to pay this much. I'm going to get some loans, I'm going to get some grants. And so it's when that financial aid package comes out throughout after the application process and the acceptance process, that's when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, about how much are you going to be having to pay. So these are just a few examples of kind of how a student might look at the scenario and how a parent might look at the scenario. So again, what could kids be doing this rest of the school year, over the summer? I'm happy to say many of the campus visits, with the notifications I've been getting from colleges, they are starting to do some more on-campus visits. There for a while, it was everything absolutely was virtual. In fact, their offices weren't even open. Everything was electronic. I am encouraging students to keep an eye out for some more on-campus tours getting restarted this summer. Lots and lots of online research. I referred a little bit ago to our Naviance program. We work with the Naviance program in our AirPods in your students' homerooms. And they've been doing lessons on Naviance with future planning, career planning, college planning. And there's a number of research tools. And then at school, we counselors are happy to help kids. And then we also host college admission representative visits. This year, most have been virtual. I don't see any of ours this year coming back in person, but I do see in the fall that we'll have representatives from a number of schools. Usually throughout the week, we'll get anywhere between 3 and 10 college visits. And we have advertised those to students on the Naviance program, and they can get a pass and come down from class, and then they can speak with the representative right in our office. But like I said, those have been all virtual this year. We expect those to go back in person in the fall. And then I referenced a funnel a little while ago. There's my funnel, initial search. So some kids already have it pared down, and that's great. You might already have it down to 3 schools, 5 schools, 10 schools. But what we're looking at right now is starting with the higher part of the funnel, the wider part of the funnel, and paring that down by next fall, because we don't anticipate students to apply to many more than we typically say 3 to 5 schools. So we want to start that search big and pare it down. So in the Naviance program, there's a college tab. Students can start adding their list. They don't have to do that right now. This is just something we are encouraging to be thinking about to organize that search. And then once they put the college in there, in that list, they'll automatically generate emails when there's a visit coming, when there's deadlines coming up, if there's opportunities for them to visit, or if, like I said, the rep is coming to visit. It also creates a grid that organizes it for them, which is great. And then just some tips. I had used that term super college match a little bit ago. That tool is in Naviance. And I think this is another good tip, considering the end goal, when students say, I'm going to be a doctor. Well, that's great. You can plan your pre-med route, whether you're going to major in biology or chemistry, but focus on that first degree first, going to that undergraduate, going to the bachelor's degree step first. And this last tip sometimes is a little bit difficult for people to wrap their head around about don't rule schools out based on cost yet. I use this example, this is years ago, but I had a student who actually, she was looking at her two options happened to be McAllister, and then she was looking at, I want to say I think it was St. Cloud. So St. Cloud State is a public university, a Minnesota Public University. The sticker cost on that is pretty even. The state universities are pretty even. McAllister, of course, for those of you who might be familiar, it's a liberal arts school in St. Paul. Cost on McAllister's private school is quite high. So she was deciding between the two, really was going to go to St. Cloud because cost-wise, that was going to keep her loans way down. After all the scholarships came through, her financial aid award came through, her grants came through, the cost to attend McAllister per year actually went lower than the cost to attend St. Cloud. Now, does that happen as a rule? No, I can't say that happens all the time, but it does happen. So that's why in that initial search, again, search for fit. Search for fit. Cost can be part of that search, but it's searching for that fit first. It's too early to do the FAFSA. The FAFSA for 2022 graduates will open on October 1st. And I'm just saying that acronym, but FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. All students will complete that with their parent income information as well. And like I said, that will open on October 1st. There is something though, you can go on and you can estimate your FAFSA. So if you wanted to use, if you just finished your taxes, I know tax time is kind of right now, you could go on and estimate. It would give you a little idea. Actually, it's a pretty close idea of what you'd be looking at with FAFSA. The other calculator that's out there, net price calculator, this recently became a guideline that all colleges and universities have to follow and have to provide on their website, is a net price calculator. So that also gives you an idea of actual costs. So just some ideas as far as going through. I want to take a moment and see, Jennifer, if there's many questions coming through yet. I've been doing a lot of talking, so it's a good time for a break.
We don't have any questions that have come in just yet.
Okay. Well, I will keep going then. So college admissions. Two-year colleges, it's open admission. Student has a diploma, they get in. So the requirements, they apply, they have their diploma, and you'll notice I have test scores with an asterisk. So two-year colleges do not require any kind of ACT or SAT score. However, the use of test scores, if a student has done fairly well on an ACT or SAT, that may help them as far as course placement. So for instance, when a student applies to a two-year college, I would say the most common in our area is Normandale. We also have a number of students who go to Minneapolis Community Tech, MCTC downtown. There is no requirement for test scores. However, once they apply, they will be invited to take what's called an ACTSAT. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But the ACTSAT essentially shows a score for where the student is ready, college ready, in math, reading, and English. So an ACT score can help and maybe even excuse them from an ACTSAT. So two general routes. Some students go to a two-year school, they complete a career program, they get their associate's degree, and they enter the workforce. Other students choose a two-year college to complete their program concentration and earn their associate's degree, and then transfer on to finish their last 2 years at a four-year college. And as you can see, I put in a disclaimer there at the bottom. And some of you may have heard of this. For the class of 2020 that graduated, and now the class of 2021, the ACT scores, colleges have changed the way they're viewing ACT scores. Many have waived them, and they've suspended them. I don't see that they're getting rid of them permanently, but also for class of 2022. So for our current juniors, many colleges have already announced that they will be waiving and or suspending ACT score submission for fall 22. So what that means is your students can share an ACT score. They won't be required to share an ACT score. So for two-year colleges, open admission, they apply diploma. The ACTSAT, I'll just talk a little bit about it. The ACTSAT was not used last spring. It's not being used this spring, and that's because it's an in-person test. And so many of the colleges have not reinstated their in-person testing. But in the past, it's been used to determine course placement, course readiness. Students can score college ready, almost college ready, or adult basic ed. And so, like I said, I want to tell you about this in case it comes back. But I can tell you right now, a little bit like ACT and SAT, they have been suspended for right now. Can a student study for an ACCUPLACER? Not really. They can do test prep. But the beauty of the ACCUPLACER, it is not timed. Students go in, they take it. It's a 3-part exam, reading, math, and writing, and it's for course placement. Four-year colleges, we're going to go through the rest of the application, or the rest of the presentation, excuse me, for four-year colleges, because they are having, they do have a more elaborate process than the two-year schools. So Office of Admission, they're looking for finding, admitting, enrolling strong freshman class. They're looking for well-rounded, active kids. They're looking for students who will be successful at their campus. So it's kind of that every year we hear from students, I can't believe I didn't get in. Well, a lot of times what happens, what I see, is you don't know, students don't know who they're competing against. So when it goes into a holistic approach, and holistic means, we'll get into that, where they look at every part of a student's application, not just their numbers, not just what their GPA is, what their classes are. They're looking at the whole person. So we want to let kids know that they're not the office of denial. They're not in the business of denying students, but they are in the business of offering admission to students who are really going to be the most successful. Sometimes that's hard to grasp, but I try to let the kids know we don't ever know who else is swimming in the pool. We don't know who else is in that pool. So how they do it, they separate into two factors. Primary factors, those are your numbers. That's what you look like on paper. GPA, class rank, test scores, rigor, interests academically. Secondary, this is kind of where it gets a little more gray, but this gray area actually can be really, really important for students who maybe don't look the best on paper, but really in the holistic realm are admissible. So leadership activities, what kind of volunteering, unique talents. Maybe you're very musical and you're applying to the School of Music at Luther. Extenuating family things. What kind of things has your family gone through? Has there been sickness? Has there been divorce? Has there been a big move? Are you a first-generation student? Are you the first in your family to go to college? And sometimes people might think, well, why would that necessarily matter? There's specific funding and specific earmarked scholarships for first-generation students. And then just personal obstacles. We've had students who have overcome sicknesses, broken bones, things like that. So it's really a sign of the tenacity and the perseverance of a student and how that could translate into college success. So the primary factors, you're on paper. It really is, it's on paper. Numbers. So when you think about that, and they're not taking ACT or SAT into consideration, GPA, class rank, and transcript. And transcript, we actually have a COVID disclaimer on our transcript as of last spring, because as you're well aware, students were given the opportunity, depending on where their grade fell, to get a P grade instead of a lower, like a C or a D grade. So the transcript does have that COVID disclaimer on it. And just so you kind of know, the primary factors do account for about 60 to 65% of admissions decisions, because they're concrete. They're concrete. It's called their academic profile. So for a student who maybe doesn't fall into all of those categories the best against everyone else, this is where you in real life comes in. This is called holistic review. How have you given back to the school with leadership activities? How have you given back to the community? What kind of unique talents? The Eagle Scout one, I use that all the time because sometimes students will be like, well, you know, it was a scouting thing. Anybody who knows a person who has earned their Eagle Scout, they know that's a sign of tenacity. They know that's a sign of huge commitment. The colleges know that as well. The family circumstances talked a little bit about first generation. Personal obstacles. Sometimes people look at these as actually black marks against their record, but instead, how did you come through it? How have you overcome it? How have you dealt with it? Maybe it's not even an obstacle that's been overcome, but how have you dealt with it? How have you addressed it? And work experience. Colleges want to know, how do you spend your time outside of school? If you're not otherwise active in the leadership and the community service, well, I've been working because I work 25 hours a week because I actually give money to my family to be able to pay and support our lives. So the primary, I think most people with college admission think primary. And I will tell you, most four-year colleges now do the primary and the secondary. The University of Minnesota has been like this for forever, as long as I remembered the holistic review. Private schools also very holistic review, but I've even been seeing now, I would say in the past 3 years especially, the state schools. The state, Mankato, St. Cloud, Winona, they're still mostly primary, but they do also now take into consideration the secondary. 2-year schools, not at all. Remember, 2-year schools, you get your diploma, you're in. So that's where that comes in. Here's another little natural break if any other questions have popped in or any questions.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
Question from Lisa. Are the students learning about the Naviance program during the school day? Also, are there ongoing discussions about Naviance, etc.?
Yes. So great question. Naviance is a program we've been using. Actually, they were introduced to it in 9th grade, and it wasn't used on a regular basis until this year. So in the students' AirPods, that's their homeroom that meets every single day, they have Naviance lessons. So they all have a login. They log in right through their Clever account on their home portal. So yes, students are familiar with Naviance, have their login. If they have any issues with it, I would welcome them to reach out to their AirPod teacher or absolutely reach out to me.
Great. Question from Tracy. She'd like to know a little bit more about scholarships. Is that something that's coming up later in the presentation?
Yes, you know, we don't focus so much on financial aid this evening. Tonight more is just the application procedure, but what I can tell you about scholarships is for right now, there aren't any scholarships that junior age students are focused on. Many of the scholarships that we offer through Richfield and national scholarships as well, those become available during the senior year of high school. So what we'll do is we'll have a scholarship bulletin. Well, we have one now actually for seniors, but the scholarship bulletin comes out weekly. It's in our newsletter right now. So if you see our emailed newsletter from our principal every Sunday evening, it comes out. The end of it, the information for seniors has all of the scholarships available. So if you just want to look at it, you could look at it. But we'll be doing a financial aid night in September. So in September, when we're all back, hopefully in school, we will be doing a financial aid night that will talk about scholarships, loans, grants, and also kind of a primer on the FAFSA. So what kids can be doing right now for scholarships, and I tell them this all the time, any kind of volunteering is huge. Any kind of community service is huge. And any kind of, grades. I mean, not any kind of grades, their best grades. That's what can really help in the scholarship search, not even search right now, but quest.
Great. I will just add one thing because Sarah, I don't even know if you know about it yet, but if you go to the Richfield High School website, not the district one, but the high school website, and you go to the menu and go to student life and post-secondary planning, all of the scholarships that we've been putting out in those newsletters are listed there. So you don't have to be digging through week after week of newsletter. You can find it right there, as well as announcements based on grade level, and you can sort all of that when you're on the website. All right, yeah, for now, if you want to keep going, and then we'll probably have a couple more questions at the end.
Okay, great. So this part of the presentation, ACT, SAT, this used to be a huge part of my presentation, but as I've alluded to through my last few slides, not as much of a big deal anymore. And I actually see colleges, don't quote me on this, but I think this was a long time coming to go away from standardized tests a little bit. First of all, I want to say when people talk about ACT, SAT, there's no reason to take both because colleges throughout the whole United States take both of them. Some kids like to take both just to say they took both, but we in the Midwest and at Richfield High School, we have tended to lean more toward the ACT. You'll notice all the asterisks in the COVID disclaimer. They are not required by most schools as part of the application. At least right now, they are waived. I will tell students, and I'm telling you that scores can help you. Scores can help students. They will never hurt a student. College will always, like we just talked about with the holistic admission, they will always take the most beneficial information for a student. Some colleges may still be looking at awarding some merit-based scholarships based on ACT. I haven't seen specific information come out on that for most schools right now. And some colleges, sometimes they use it to determine like for honors program placement. But like I said, last year, graduating class, 2021 graduating class, and then 2022, they have all told us, most colleges and universities have told us they are going really strictly on course completion. So take that for what it's worth. Again, ACT or SAT, all colleges accept either. I have fee waivers for them. Choose one. You don't need to take both. And college will always use a score to the student's advantage. So like I said, if kids are worried about, oh, what if I don't do well and I submit it and oh, it's going to be a black mark on my record, not at all. They're always going to take a score to your benefit. We are offering the ACT next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, at the high school. It is in person. It's not required, but we are encouraging students who are considering life after high school being a college route to complete it. We did register in the AirPods before spring break. My last count today, I think 135 students had registered, so a little over half the class. And like I said, it's not required, but the kids do need to get registered. And their AirPod teachers have all of the information on how to register. There's no cost. It is at school. We don't have in-person school on Wednesday, so it will just be the ACT kids at the school taking it. And I need to get a pretty good idea of who's registered so that I can get a couple of buses set up and some food service set up as well. So kids know about it. Your kids probably are even already registered, but it'd be a great idea to check with your kids. And if there's questions about really, should I have my kid take one more test? I'm happy to answer those questions as well. So kind of as a last thinking about it, they are always monitoring how it's affecting the application and the academic delivery options, whether they're going to be completely online or back on campus. The on-campus visits, definitely be checking the websites because I do see some of them being reintroduced this summer. And like I've mentioned too, many schools have already announced they will be waiving their test requirements for the fall. And it's kind of like the way of the world right now. It's like everything could change again next week. It'll be okay. Colleges want students, and I know students want to be at the best fit colleges. So what you can be doing now, prepping application materials. We're going to be doing help sessions this fall. And just so you don't get nervous, kids are like, oh, I got to get all this done. Colleges don't begin their application review until the fall. So trying to get everything in August, you can get them together, but we're not going to be sending any transcripts until the middle of September as well. So deep breath. Now is the time to be taking that funnel, going from here to here, and getting those things figured out, getting that best fit determined. So we are about at 6:45. I didn't think I'd talk this much, but I did. So my email address is on there. My phone number is on there. Or you can simply click on that. That is a live link to be able to type in questions that come up. Because we're happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Okay.
Jumping, so there's a couple quick questions, and also I'll let folks know that we will send an email tomorrow with a recording of this presentation and the link to that form, because you probably can't click on it from your screen. So we'll make sure you get that link tomorrow as well. So one question, why would ACT scores from junior year affect college admin? Isn't that early? It's a question from Amber.
So, well, ACT scores right now, so when they take them in April, this is usually the first time students will take the ACT. And then if they want to take it again, they could take it this summer or next fall. When a college is requiring them for admission, this is the most common time for a student to take it to submit for next year. Did I answer that?
I think so. So
Okay.
There's multiple opportunities. If they don't like the score they got this time, they could take it again.
Yeah, many opportunities. The ACT for the district covered one though is next Wednesday. Otherwise, the ACT website has a number of Saturday test dates. There's one in June, July, September, October, December. There's one on there on Saturdays, but that would be at student cost.
All right, we'll take one last question tonight, and then anybody that we didn't get to, Sarah will follow up with you personally tomorrow. So this one is from Tracy. Do the college applications require students to have references?
That is a great question too. Some of them will require letters of recommendation. The private schools, four-year private schools, but the public universities, in fact, the University of Minnesota will not accept them anymore. You used to be able to send them in and they'd read them. They don't accept them anymore. Many of the private schools. And then scholarships. Scholarships will also require letters of recommendation. And that is something that we'll hit on in September right away with the students, because September is when they would be requesting those letters of recommendation.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That brings us to 6:45. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, look for an email tomorrow that'll have a copy of this as well as some of the questions and answers and an opportunity to click on that form if you have additional questions. Have a great night, everyone.